Good to go. All right. Shalom, Lord Christ. This is Officer of 1,000 Yahweh, and this is the Monday night history class. Today's topic is the Trail of Tears, or what is known as the Indian Removal Act. So that's what we're teaching on today. So basically, there was a time back in Florida, right, where because I had taught about it before. It was called the Gullah Wars. The Gullah Wars were the Seminole Indians, which was also had Judites mixed in, because people think that the what do you call it? You know, the Underground Railroad. People think that it always went north, right? You was taught it always went north, right? But at this time, Florida was actually owned by, I think, the Spanish or the French, one of those two. It was owned by them. So, and that was a free state. You get what I'm saying? So it was a free state at that moment because it wasn't owned by America. So a lot of times what would happen is the Seminoles or the black slaves, they will go down to Seminole Country, Florida, and they'll get in good with the Native Americans there. And then they will go and fight against our oppressor, against slavery. So, of course they didn't like that. They didn't like us being free.
Right.
They didn't like slaves was, leaving and going into Florida and they was protected. Right? They didn't like that. So of course what they started doing, writing up laws. So then now it justified them to do whatever they wanted to do to anybody. If you could write in a damn law, you can do whatever you want to do to anybody. That's how they feel with their policy. That's why in Daniel chapter 8, right around verse 25, 26, it says through their policy, they cause like harm to other people. Through their policy, it was their laws, right? Their laws do it. So they make laws in order they already gonna try to outnumber you and try to enslave you, but then they're gonna make a law so then it says they can get away with it. So they don't even go to jail for their own crimes. Because they made a law that said it's legal. That's why you 3/5 of a man. You 3/5 of a man means the Constitution don't fit you. Right?
It's a lot, Yalawan. A lot of of us don't understand is when they wrote the Constitution, your people was enslaved.
Okay.
It wasn't for you. It wasn't meant for you. It was meant for them.
Exactly.
It's a lot.
That's what. And then even when you got slavery, they say you was 3/5 of a man because they didn't want you to have more votes. So when it came to voting, that's why they came up like there's so much stuff like we don't even realize. Like when you vote in America, your vote don't matter, right?
Right.
Because the people that actually do your vote is called the Electoral College. Who the hell they are? I have no idea.
Right.
Like you go look up Electoral College on Google and look up, try to find a member of the Electoral College. Okay. It's hard to find them. You don't know who the hell they are. Okay. That's the people that actually elect the president. Ain't got nothing to do with you. Just like I heard a general, he said a president, they'll win the popular vote, but they'll lose the Electoral College. They'll lose that because that's who's actually the ones that elect the president. They just want you to have the popular vote. So if you have the popular vote, that's like something else that they take into consideration where the people want them to, right?
It's a lot, y'all. Like when the presidents, when they start running for their presidency, they tend to try to attract blacks, Hispanic, and Native Indian issues. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
To get that popular vote. But then, like you said, on the electoral vote, they're not with it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Like from what I know, I don't think. I mean, I have to check everything, but if I recall correctly, what was the last president before Joe Biden?
Oh, Salaki. Barack?
No, Donald Trump.
Oh, Donald Trump.
I think he didn't win the popular vote, but he won the Electoral College. If I'm not mistaken, I can't remember if that's exactly the case, but that's what would happen. Even like with George Bush, when he was the president, right? Everybody hated George Bush and all of that in the 2000s, right? He didn't win, if I'm, like I said, if I'm not mistaken, correctly, he didn't win the popular vote. He won the electoral college vote. The electoral college is the one that puts your president in office. Because I think, what was his name, Al Gore or something like that ran against him one year?
Against Trump's a lot.
No, against George Bush. I think it was Al Gore. He ran against him one year. So it's like I was in grade school trying to remember this stuff. But yeah, so you know, that's how they win. That's where electoral college come from. So that's how your president is selected. Has nothing to do with you. That's why you was 3/5 of a man, because they didn't even want you to even have a popular vote, right? So I say all that to say this is that they use policies to make themselves win. That's how they do it, because you know they even got a saying, more wars are won with the pen than by the sword. No, these damn treaties they had with the Native Americans, and they didn't follow neither one of them. And then you know, of course, they make a law that said we ain't gotta follow the laws, right? We ain't gotta follow the treaty that we made. The Native Americans, because they had some form of dignity and integrity, they didn't encroach on a treaty that they set aside, even though they shouldn't have had to make the treaty in the first place, because it was their damn land, right?
Right.
So you came and encroached on their land. They made, you know, you offered a treaty, they accepted it, and you still go back on your word. That's why they called him he spoke with a forked tongue, man, a snake.
It's a lot, y'all. They broke 368 treaties.
It's nice. Ain't even that many days in the year, man. They broke that many treaties, man. 368 treaties. That's a lot. I don't even know if there's that many tribes. You know what I'm saying? Like Native American tribes, man. They broke all them treaties that they approached them with. They didn't approach, the Native Americans didn't approach them with a treaty. They was fighting them. They approached them with a treaty, and they broke every single one of them. Because here's what they do. The treaty isn't meant for them. The treaty is meant for you.
Right.
They want you to follow a law, because they know we more so law-abiding people than they are. They try to say that because we do crimes, whatever, sales of drugs. No, how the hell we get here?
So like the other one. That's more like, that's kind of like the police department now. Like the police department ain't for the white people. I mean, for the oppressors. It's to keep blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians in line and making sure they not committing crime.
Exactly, it's not for them.
They always committing crime.
And they get away with it. If you want to see one of the greatest scams, man, go in your free time. The older brothers know about this already, but if you're a little young, you might not know. Look up Enron. Look up, if you want to see a scam, look up Enron. It'll tell you right then and there, it ain't nothing but the devil, man. You'll see, man, I'll go over it briefly, just so you know. Enron was like an energy company, and what they did was, like, they went public, which means you go public. That means people start investing and getting stocks and all of that, right?
Okay.
And they had cooked the books in a way to make it look like they were always, the stock was going up all of the time. It was just always Enron doing good. And then them niggas, and then they ran. They took off. With all them people's, life savings and money. And here's the part that nobody don't talk about.
So I got one.
Oh, one second. Here's the part that nobody talks about. This happened like 2002, 2001-ish. Here's the thing. If I'm not mistaken, it happened before the Twin Towers. So they was running off of people's money. And the person that actually was cool with them and friends with them was George Bush. That's how they was able to get away. We're stealing billions of dollars from people.
Like I was gonna say, did that have anything to do with like Bernie Madoff that did the Ponzi scheme type thing? Was that the same thing or was that something different?
I don't know. I think that was something different.
Okay.
I mean, but it's a similar thing, though. It's similar to how they did it, but they just did it in a more creative way. Like they had like a genius accountant, and they had probably several of accountants, and they would just cook the books to make everything look right. But then once you brought in, people. I'm not saying necessarily the IRS, but you start bringing in the people that's like qualified IRS level with numbers. Then it showed that it was all falsehood. So that's a real audit for their books. It would show how they cooked it and all that, how they cooked up the books to make it like it was always growing in stock when they weren't. And so actually it was plummeting, but people kept investing, and then they took off of people's money, and they didn't go to jail or nothing. It was a sister that that's what all of the money scams came around in 2000. It was a sister I was watching one time. She only made maybe like $2 million, and they gave her 9 years. And when you doing them type of like scams, like money scams and all of that, you got other people with you. You don't do it by yourself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You getting, making your credit jump up. You gotta have somebody in at the credit place. You gotta have somebody in at the car place. You gotta have all these people in on it making money. But she the one that went to jail for 9 years. But it showed you that we go to jail for our crimes. That's why it seems like black people do more crimes, because we actually get punished for our crimes. They don't. They don't go to jail for their crimes. If they went to jail for their crimes, all of them would be in jail. All of them be in jail. They did time for their crimes. Yeah, man. I can talk about this all day, man. a Jewish little boy was raping a girl in the middle, like in an alley, and he got off because he said he got off for 6 months time served because they called it affluenza because he didn't know it was wrong.
Oh, that's that Salaki I don't want. That's that affluenza team dude.
Yep.
And he's still doing shit.
Exactly. So it just shows you they don't do time for their crimes, man. Especially if you got a little money in you and in the society, you ain't do no time, man. You don't go to jail for it. Everybody read it to like Jackson, all of the stuff he did. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson he right behind Christopher Columbus. Yeah. He wasn't his he basically like a lieutenant for Christopher Columbus, man. All the people he killed. And where he at? On a $5 bill. I even think he on Mount Rushmore. Right? That's they killers. And they make statues after they killers, man. Statues. And that's what he is, a mass murderer. Let that be the DC sniper. He ain't gonna get none, but you know what I'm saying? But they murderers, they honor they murderers, man. All right, let's go ahead and get into it, man. So I can get into that. I can go into that all day.
So lucky I don't want. I mean, you got like they John Gotti's, they Scarfaces, all that. Like they make them idols. You know what I'm saying? But let a brother trying to get out the hood doing something. You know what I'm saying? He gonna get locked up under the jail.
Yeah, I know. Big Meech, he's still in jail. They won't let him out. Still in jail.
Right.
But all of these other, they got bodies on them. I don't even think they even got bodies on him. I'm not saying he didn't do nothing, but I don't think Big Meech they even convicted him of having bodies. He more just got having a drug enterprise. And there's people out here with bodies on them, and they got off. They out before him. I just go show you, they don't do time for their crimes, man. They don't do the time like that. But all right, let's get into this though. The Trail of Tears, right? So after the Gullah Wars, when we finally did lose the war, we finally lost it. They wanted to get the Native Americans out of the southeastern region because they wanted that for farming. Because you got to think of all of the money that was being made on the farmland. You got to think like that cotton, that tobacco. What else they had? The sugar cane, all of those different, resources that they was able to acquire. And the Native Americans, they was just trying to, live, right? So they wanted them off of those lands so that they could cultivate it and make money, make profit for them. Don't care that the Native Americans helped them survive. Don't care that what the Native Americans did for them. They wanted them dead. They wanted them off the land. That was more important, right? Money.
Okay.
So let's get into it. All right. At the beginning of the 1830s, nearly 125,000 Native Americans lived on millions of acres of land in Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, North Carolina, and Florida land. Land their ancestors had occupied and cultivated, and this was land that their ancestors had occupied and cultivated for generations. By the end of the decade, very few natives remained anywhere in the southeastern United States, working on behalf of white settlers who wanted to grow cotton on the Indians' land. The federal government forced them to leave their homelands and walk hundreds of miles to a especially designated Indian territory across the Mississippi River. This difficult and sometimes daily journey is known as the Trail of Tears, right? So they wanted them to go, basically this area, Indian territory is Oklahoma, Kansas. And you from Oklahoma, what's in Oklahoma?
Nothing, just land.
Exactly. Can you grow anything on that land?
Nah, it's like desolate.
It's a desolate land. There's nothing you can do with that land.
Okay.
Only thing you can kind of do on that land is, what do you call it? Like cattle.
Okay.
The only thing you're going to see out there is cattle. You're not going to see no farms like that. It's going to be very few and far between. It's not a rich soil to grow things on, like things east of the Mississippi, right? So it just, land and soil, black people, we know how to cultivate, we know how to make land, we know how to farm. We know how to do it because we the ones that invented it, farming, right? Okay. Now this is the Indian problem. White Americans, particularly those who lived on the western frontier, often feared and resented the Native Americans they encountered. To them, Native American Indians seemed to be an unfamiliar, alien people who occupied land that white settlers wanted, and they believed they deserved the land. Some officials in the early years of the American Republic, such as President George Washington, believed that the best way to solve this Indian problem was simply to civilize the Native Americans. Now, civilize, of course, that means, let's go get into it. The goal of civilization, of the civilization campaign, was to make Native Americans as much like white Americans as possible by encouraging them to convert to Christianity, of course, learn to speak and read English, and adopt European style economic practices such as the individual ownership of land and other property, including in some instances in the South African slaves. In the southeastern United States, mainly Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole, Creek, and Cherokee people embraced these customs and became known as the 5 civilized tribes. So if they went and took on somebody else's, their culture, they called them the civilized tribes. But their culture was very uncivil. They didn't treat the Native Americans civil at all. But they wanted to call them the civilized tribes. A lot of them were traitors. Let's be honest. They were traitors, but they had decided to align with our oppressors because they didn't, they didn't think that they can fight them. Basically, they gave up and said it's better just like church, like your pastors. Don't fight against what they teach you. Just embrace it and learn how to live with its survival. But sometimes, man, sometimes it's better than to die.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry. Sometimes it's better to die than live as a slave. It is better to die, right? But their land, located in parts of Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, was valuable, and it grew to be more coveted as white settlers flooded the region. Many of these whites yearned to make their fortunes by growing cotton, and often resorted to violent means to take land from their indigenous neighbors. They stole livestock, burned and looted houses and towns. But they want to say that we loot places, right? And steal. We rob and steal. Who we learning from?
It's a lot.
Right.
We learning from our oppressors.
We didn't loot places. We had no need to. We loot places because either out of anger or out of necessity. They loot places because they jealous. Look at the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing and all of that. They looted those houses because of jealousy. It had nothing to do with anything. They seen us doing good and they wanted us dead because of it, man. All right. They also committed mass murder. Mass murder. And here, you'll love this one. And they squatted on land that did not belong to them. Those squatters came from your oppressor. That's where you learn that from, squatters. All of this come from your oppressors, man. Looting. We don't, and then like, if you see, man, that's why like, if I go and I see something on the news that, a brother killed, a devil, man. Yeah, he shouldn't have done it. I agree. I'm not on that part. But like, I don't really feel that type of sympathy. They want you to feel sympathy for this person that lost their family. But look what happened to all of these families here.
Right.
Think about how many generations and that they have wiped out. Do you realize that there's some Native Americans that don't even have a legacy no more? The men don't even have a legacy because they killed the whole family and all their children. And they worried about one police officer. His children still alive. Right? Don't get me wrong, the brother, he shouldn't have done it, but damn. Think about these people here. They got whole families that have been eradicated.
Right.
Whole families. They can't pass they genes down to anybody. His whole family got wiped away. Because they committed mass murder. They talk about one brother just being stupid, knuckleheaded, and he shoot one person. This is mass murder here, man. And then they put a big grave. They'll go dig a big hole, and just throw the bodies in there. You probably walking on your brothers and sisters every day in your life. And I'm not even talking about just walking on because they just died and got buried. I'm talking about mass murders. What?
Like the other one. I mean, you know I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, so I pay attention to the news down there. So they found like within the Black Wall Street area, the Greenwood area, or whatever. They only found like 300 like graves. I mean, just bodies under the ground. They still finding more. They ain't bringing that out in the news, but that's just our people. They just threw in the fucking threw in the ground, and we don't know nothing about. But they still
that's just one place.
That's just one place. Kind of.
That's just one area. They had plenty of mass. Like there's reports of several mass graves where they just dump people in. Remember when I brought out about the Panama deception? They did the same thing with them. They would kill them, then they would pile up all their bodies on the back of a truck or something, and then just dump them on they'll get like just stuff and dig like a big hole and just throw the bodies in there and then wipe off their sins, man. Now, because they can't find, like, you know how they say, right? Like, even in the criminal stuff, there's no body, there's no murder. They said even if you watch some criminal shows, there's no body, there hasn't been a murder. Then where he at then? You know what I'm saying? That's how they go. If you can't find the bodies, then, I don't know, they just left. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know. You see it, you found his body? And you know your body, especially on the ground, is unrecognizable after what, like a week? So you still can't identify who it was you killed. So that's what they would do, man. Just throw them in mass graves after they've committed mass murder. They can't even give you a proper burial, man. They just lump you in with a bunch of people like you a damn animal, man. They do, man, they dogs, they give them a damn, man, they give them a whole funeral. Look at these, man, they'll give them a whole damn funeral. They have music, candles for a damn dog, man. Make them a casket out of their own hands. And then bury a damn dog or a cat. But they just throw you in a big hole with all your other brothers and sisters, man.
It's a lot of people on major. They even have insurance on their dogs, so they can get a kick.
So I tell you, man. And then, like, I mean, it's kind of a messed up way to think about it, and you wonder why the land down here was so fertile, man. It's full with dead bodies, man. Just think about that for a second. Full of dead bodies. That's why the land might be fertile right there. Full of your ancestors. All right. State governments joined in this effort to drive Native Americans out of the South. Several states passed laws limiting Native American sovereignty and rights and encroaching on their territory. They gave them the rights, supposedly, and now they say we need to take them back. In Worcester versus Georgia in 1832, the U.S. Supreme Court objected to these practices and affirmed that Native nations were sovereign nations in which the laws of Georgia and other states can have no force. So they were told that, with their own laws, they told that they're not able to have any force against the Native Americans because they're sovereign. So those brothers that be thinking that they Moors and they supposed to be on a sovereign nation, you still gonna get locked up, put in prison. They still gonna drive. If they want to, they'll come and take your land right now. And you wanna say you sovereign. They don't care nothing about their own laws. They make the laws so they can break them. Right? All right. Even so, the maltreatment continued. As President Andrew Jackson noted in 1832, if no one intended to enforce the Supreme Court's rulings, which he certainly did not, then the decisions would fall, stillborn. So they're saying that if they make a law, but they don't enforce it against their own people. So they're not even enforcing the law that they said they made. So, all right. Southern states were determined to take ownership of Indian lands and would go to great lengths to secure this territory. All right, so they went to great lengths. They did whatever they could because they wanted this land, because they knew that, this was like the gold rush. The gold rush before was in California where they would go kill people for them, to get gold. Now it's switched over to here that the gold rush was in this land. You can get you some crops, some cotton, and you can sell this cotton and make you a whole bunch of money. But of course, they don't want to pay for the land. They don't want to give the Native Americans something. They just want to kill them and take it. All right. Indian removal. Andrew Jackson had long been an advocate of what he called Indian removal. As an Army general, he had spent years leading brutal campaigns against the Creeks in Georgia and Alabama and the Seminoles in Florida. Campaigns that resulted in the transfer of hundreds of thousands of acres of land from Indian nations to white farmers. As president, he continued this crusade. So, as a general, you gotta think, wow, that's why they made him president, right? Just like anybody that's a president, right? Anybody who's going for president, they do a lot of stuff to kind of show where they stand at with different things. And then when you see where they stand at, now you be like, okay, this brother could be president. And because he was taking all of the money, taking all of the land from the Native Americans and giving it to white farmers, they decided that, yeah, he needs to be president because he's putting the money back in the hands of the people. He's, when they go fight around, well, we need more jobs, right? This is what he was doing for the white people down there, right? He's giving them jobs. All right. As president, he continued his crusade. In 1830, he signed the Indian Removal Act, which gave the federal government the power to exchange native held land in the Cotton Kingdom east of the Mississippi for land to the west in the Indian colonization zone that the United States had acquired as part of the Louisiana Purchase. This Indian territory was located in present-day Oklahoma. All right. Because, they had bought the Louisiana Purchase, which was like part of Texas and Missouri. But they gave, Missouri can still grow stuff. They gave them Oklahoma where ain't nothing can be grown at. They gave them the Dakotas where there's nothing but just prairie land out there. You can't grow anything out there. The weather is too windy. It's like it tears the plants up. It's not good land for to grow crops. The weather is too harsh. They have a hell of a lot of tornadoes, all of that, right? So it's just not good land for the to grow anything over there. The law required the government to negotiate removal treaties fairly, voluntarily, and peacefully. It did not permit the president or anyone else to coerce Native Americans to give up their land. However, President Jackson and his government frequently ignored the letter of the law and forced Native Americans to vacate lands they had lived on for generations. In the winter of 1831, under threat of invasion by the U.S. Army, the Choctaw became the first nation to be expelled from its land altogether. They made the journey to Indian territory on foot. Some bound in chains and marched double file. One historian, he wrote this. And without any food, supplies, or any help from the government, thousands of people died along the way. It was one Choctaw leader told an Alabama newspaper, a trail of tears and death. All right. The Indian removal process continued. In 1836, the federal government drove the Creeks from their land for the last time. Because this wasn't the first time they removed them from their land. So they would move them to different places, and then when they feel like they needed the land for whatever reason, they would move them again. All right? 3,500 of the 15,000 Creeks who set out for Oklahoma did not survive the trip. So this is what almost a third of the people did not even survive the trip. The Cherokee people were divided. What was the best way to handle the government's determination to get its hands on their territory? Some wanted to stay and fight. Others thought it was more pragmatic to agree to leave in exchange for money and other concessions. In 1835, a few self-appointed representatives of the Cherokee Nation negotiated the Treaty of New Echota, which traded all Cherokee land east of Mississippi for $5 million, relocation assistance, and compensation for lost property to the federal government. The treaty was a done deal, but many of the Cherokee felt betrayed. After all, the negotiators did not represent the tribal government or anyone else. The instrument in question is not the act of our nation, wrote the nation's principal chief John Ross in a letter to the U.S. Senate protesting the treaty. We are not parties to its covenants. It has not received the sanction of our people. Nearly 16,000 Cherokees signed Ross's petition, but Congress approved the treaty anyway. So this was a treaty that they made for the Native Americans that the Native Americans didn't even sign. So basically, that's like somebody, you got your house, right? I sign the papers to get your house, and you don't know nothing about it, and all of a sudden you gotta leave. Right? You didn't sign it. How did I sign? How did you get something signed like you sold your house to me for whatever amount of money and you didn't have anything to do with it? And then now you got it. Now you legally bound to get off the land or get off your property, man. And then they went and they protested this treaty, like hell, protested it, and they still said, "Oh, you know what? We still gonna go through with it." Like I said, they make their laws for you. That's the point of what they made. Those laws, they were trying to get rid of the drugs, the war on crime. That was a war against you. It was not a war against no damn drugs. Because right now, who having all the drugs now? Your oppressors. They got all the drugs. All them high schools and colleges, they got all the drugs there. All them kids is high. But look at you, if you get a little bit of drugs, they locking you up. Hey, just can I get a napkin real quick, bro, sir? I get a napkin real quick, bro. They locking you up quick because their laws is not made for them, it's made for you. You don't have to follow their laws. And this is part of our punishment because we don't want to follow the Most High's laws, right? The Most High's laws is righteous. The Most High's laws wouldn't allow this stuff to happen. But we wanted to follow, we loved our oppressor so much, man. We felt like he knew better than the Most High, right? In 1838, only about 2,000 Cherokees had left their Georgia homeland for Indian Territory. President Martin Van Buren sent General Winfield Scott and 7,000 soldiers to expedite the removal process. Scott and his troops forced the Cherokee into stockades at Bayonet Point while his men looted their homes and belongings. So then they wanted to expedite the process. So they wanted to expedite the process because they weren't getting off their own land fast enough. So they basically they evicted them. They threw all their stuff out and they took what they wanted, right? And they marched Indians more than 1,200 miles Indian territory. Whooping cough, typhus, dysentery, which I believe is like diarrhea, cholera, and starvation were epidemic along the way. And historians estimate that more than 5,000 Cherokee died as a result of the journey. It's a lot. So as they moved them, a lot of them died during the journey. As they removed them off of their land. I'm sorry, somebody just joined? Somebody just joined the conference call? All right. So now as they removing them, a lot of them is dying. Because all of the diseases of them being in such close quarters and like, you ever notice like if you're more tired, your body is more susceptible to get sick? So if they marching you over, they took all your supplies, you don't have no food, you don't have water, things to sustain yourself. And now, disease is running rampant through everybody and they're dying because of these diseases now. And they keep pushing them, they don't let them rest. Because they came there to expedite the process. So they try to make you leave faster, right? By 1840, tens of thousands of Native Americans have been driven off of their land in the southeastern states and forced to move across the Mississippi to Indian Territory. The federal government promised that their new land will remain unmolested forever. That's a word to use. Unmolested forever. But as the line of white settlement pushed westward, Indian country shrank and shrank. In 1907, Oklahoma became a state and Indian territory was gone for good. So that's supposed to be Indian territory. So basically they moved them there and said, we're not going to mess with you no more. That's what molested means, part of it means mess with. So they said, we ain't going to mess with your land no more. Then over time, it just kept getting smaller and smaller. And then they said, okay, we're going to make it a state. Because in their laws, if it's a state and not a territory, it has to be governed by the state and, and the government. See this? They use their policy to prosper. So
I got one.
What?
So like the casinos in Oklahoma in that area, right? Like those casinos are supposed to benefit the reservations in Oklahoma. But if you look at the people that run those casinos, them are Edomites. That's wearing Indian headpieces.
God, yeah.
Like
They're not Native Americans.
No, but you saying it so heavy because it's like I've looked and seen this all my life, but I ain't understand until I came into the school.
Yeah.
Isupk and understand what the heck is going on.
But if you know anything, that's a divisive technique, right?
Okay.
Think about it. If you think of those people as Native Americans, what do you think of as a black man to them? Y'all are different. You look at them as they got something. They got casinos. They got their own land.
And you ain't even the people. It's a lot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but the thing is, if you go to a reservation, I've been to a reservation, man. You know what a reservation looks like?
Hell.
What does it look like right now? Well, it's hell pecan, but it looks like the projects.
Good. Damn right.
So you on a reservation too.
Damn right.
And what they doing right now to the projects all over America?
Gentrifying.
Exactly. It's the same thing, man. Same thing. Doing the same exact thing that they doing to you. So that shows that you the same people, man. They gentrifying. And it's not just here. They doing it in the Caribbean too. They taking their land and it's like a whole big push to go to all these different Caribbean countries and Brazil, start up businesses and all that over there. And the people, they just get poorer and poorer.
Yeah.
They can't start a business. They can't even start their own damn business in their own country.
So like I don't want gentrifying people is racism. You
God.
pushing people out of somewhere that they know of to push them to where? They don't even have nowhere to go.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like when I first moved down here, Bankhead, Hollywood Road, Bankhead, that was a big thing. T.I. was rapping about that and all that and stuff, right? But they tore down that whole section and moved all them people out of there.
Yep. It's the nigga removal act.
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's
the nigga removal.
The nigga removal act. That's what it is. The same thing they've been doing to us, they do to them. That makes you think that we different, but we're because you would think that they got a casino, right? But the difference is they're not Native Americans that own anything. And then here's the other thing, like you would think, okay, you'd be like, okay, I wish we had our own land too, right? But what did we say earlier? They use their laws to prosper in their own land. It is nearly impossible, unless you have a bunch of money, to own land on an Indian reservation.
Yes.
You have to they permit you to death, right? You got to get all these different things to own money. So that's why they don't own. That's why you'll go into a native reservation and you're gonna see a McDonald's, Starbucks. You ain't gonna see, whatever. You ain't gonna see Black Hawk, you know, Black Hawk cereal or whatever. Whatever. You ain't gonna see none of that because you can't own a business there.
That's heavy what you bringing up.
That's why they starving. They don't have no money. It's illegal for them to have land on their own business, on their own land. It is illegal unless you got all these permits.
It's like if I made out of one, like on Facebook, right? I was going back and forth with this so-called Native American, right? Straight white, whole family white. And she told me she was a Native American because of a Dow's number. A Dow's number, it's like a $5 Indian. You go pay for it, you can claim that nationality. You can claim that person. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And what she learned, she's inherited lies. You know what I'm saying? You're not those people
at all.
You want the benefits of the people on the reservation.
Yep.
But you're not the people on that reservation. You know what I'm saying? So that it's heavy what you're bringing out. So
God. Alright. Back to this.
So lucky.
Hey, shit, like, what's going on now?
Yeah, about you, man. Tell about just trying to check it in.
Oh, so okay. What's going on now?
Not much out of one. Just checking in. And I want to piggyback off what you and your brother, you and brother Marsh, I was bringing out. So heavy. You know, especially about the tactics that were used against the Native Americans and taking over their territory and stuff like that. And it kind of reminded me today when I was watching the news and stuff, and they was on they was on they was on the ABC News, and they were talking about what Putin was doing over in Ukraine, and the people was on there crying and wondering why is the military in areas and stuff where Ukraine military isn't, why they in like residential neighborhoods, why they in the population fighting and stuff like that. They breaking into people's houses, stealing their food, they raping them and stuff like that. They don't have no Ukraine military out in those areas. What they doing out there? But it's war tactics. You know what I'm saying? You
Mm-hmm.
did they even use the same military tactics against us. They weren't just looking for warriors. They weren't just looking for warriors that was fighting. They were attacking villages and stuff. People that villages and stuff that didn't have any fighters and stuff like that. They were stealing their food, raping their women, destroying them. I mean, like I'm like, it ain't no fun when rapper got guns and your people doing the same thing to you. You know, yeah, that white on white crime is love. You know, and it kind of made me think about what they did out in Oklahoma. I don't know if you ever heard of it or not. But you got like a town in Georgia called Oscarville. It's this town that's on the Lake Lanier, that they flooded out. And they used those same type of tactics to take over Oscarville. They had to, push all these black settlers and stuff, these native Indians, Negroes and stuff to this area, to this lakefront, portion of this, what we call a county now, of that land back then. And what they did was came up with some kind of lame excuse to sit there and say, look, we want all the lakefront property. We don't like these niggas out here no way. So let's just run them all out of here. So they just went on a mass killing spree. And they, opened up dams and stuff like that and flooded the whole entire black city for what we ran back then, back in Austinville. So, it's kind of heavy that, they, how they use how y'all brothers bringing the information out and how they use these tactics and how the Most High is using these same tactics that they use against us, they use against themselves now. I just want to say, the glory.
Christ, get the Most High hand for that. We gonna run upon the recompense on your own heads, man, for what you do to His people. He gonna give it right back to you. All right. It said the Trail of Tears is over. It said it asked the question, can you walk the Trail of Tears? It's over 5,043 miles long and covers 9 states: Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. Today, the Trail of Tears National Historic Trail is run by the National Park Service, and portions of it are accessible by foot, by horse, by bicycle, or by car. So now, they done made merchandise out of you, man. You know they charge for that, right? You can go there, yeah, but let's give you some, let's sell you some trinkets. Let's do some gift shops for tourism, right? So now we're going to make money off of your destruction.
It's a lot.
Good night.
Like this, it's a lot. I don't mind. What you bringing out so heavy, because like they make museums of our destruction. And we'll go in there and watch it and see it. So it's a museum in Oklahoma that is the Trail of Tears.
Mm-hmm.
And they show it. It's like Tuskegee Airmen, the Buffalo Soldiers. It's not, I'm not kind of saying making a mockery of it, but you benefit, like you saying, like you bringing out, like you benefit off our destruction. You know what I'm saying? It just happens over and over again. So
they make merchandise out of you, man. You become merchandise, something to sell and make a profit off of. And guess who don't get the money from the proceeds? You. They ain't giving no native, they ain't getting natives, none of that. They'll go around, you go probably all over the Trail of Tears that you drive through. They probably selling the Native American headpieces, clothing, the beads that they wore, probably all of that stuff. And they ain't getting none of that money. Right? And they ain't getting none of that. But if you go to Jewish people, you talk about anything with the Holocaust, they get the money. The Holocaust Museum is not ran by the government. That's ran by them.
right.
Right? They get all of that. And they little captivity lasted what, 10 years? 10 years. But how long have you, how many classes have you been taught about the Holocaust? You know damn more about the Holocaust than you know about your Holocaust.
Right.
And it was only 10 years long.
It's like I don't know.
What?
You know more about 9/11 than you know about your own Holocaust.
Exactly. You know
And
more
that
about
shit just
that.
happened. So like that shit happened. I mean, so like it just happened probably what, 12 years ago?
About 20 years ago.
Yeah.
9/11, yeah. You know what I'm saying, man?
Don't forget that. Don't forget that.
Yeah, you learn more about
Forget
that.
slavery though. Forget no.
Yeah, no, they don't want to talk about slavery. Yeah, if you go to slavery, it's a paragraph. 400 years is a paragraph. But you can get whole books. You can get movies. Man, Schindler's List. What else? You just got a whole bunch of Jewish movies talking about a 10-year period. The Diary of Anne Frank. Why do I know these? Cause you was taught this in school.
Come.
You heard of Anne Frank before, right?
Come, sir.
You heard of the Schindler's List too, right?
Come.
And I know I'm forgetting probably 3 or 4 others. But how many movies you know talking about Joe slavery? What you got? The Roots?
You can't forget that. It's a lot.
What was it? Oh, The Roots? That's about it.
Then Salaki out of one. They bring out a new nigga, the Django.
Oh yeah. They bring out Django. I like that one a little bit more. I like that one a little bit more than the rest. But yeah, but that's what they do, man. They don't want to talk about your history. They don't want you to know about it.
They give Salaki out of one. They give you an upper than a downer. So you give it the Django as an upper where we empower ourselves, or even like what's that stupid thing with Wakanda?
You know, Black Panther.
Yeah, they give us an upper and then a downer. You know what I'm saying?
So now you think you running something?
Yeah, you think you're doing
Wakanda.
something. They like you say, they make merchandise of you. Them the white folks that's selling all that. Like they selling the costumes, they making the costumes, they doing all that. They making all that.
Because there wasn't even that many Africans in that movie. The only ones that was African, the ones that looked African.
Right.
A lot of them was, the main characters was not African.
Right.
His sister was like from Peru. He was of course a Jake. You know what I'm saying? The dude I think he was fighting with, the dude that was his brother, of course, was Michael B. Jordan, a Jake.
Right,
I think one of the other dudes they was fighting with over there, one of the other king, he was another Jake. All of them was Israelites, man. The only ones was African was like the women or whatever that be fighting people and stuff, the women warriors that was all bald headed. That was it. That's what they do. They cut their hair off. Look like men. Those was the Africans. The ones that look decent and look like they don't stink was the Judah. Was Israel, man.
Right.
But everybody else was Jake, man. So they make merchandise of you, man. They even talking about like trying to bring it back like the Africans. They try to say you African. Still making merchandise on you. Making merchandise of you. That whole Egyptology, the whole like talking about Egypt, everybody thinks that is like, oh, that was what, the 60s and the 70s? Where they wanted to make Egypt a tourist place. They wanted to make it a tourist place. So you had Michael Jackson, you remember the time? And everybody started making all this stuff. What was the other one? With Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, Coming to America.
Coming to
America. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah,
So, trying to make Africa seem great. But the only reason why Africa was even great was because you was there.
Yeah, right.
That's it. Reason why every nation on this earth was ever great is because blacks and Hispanics was there.
Yeah, right.
All right. Even America, it's great right now because of you there. It's not great because of devils. White people ain't make America great. We did. That's why even this slogan, Make America Great Again, had nothing to do with white people doing anything. They wanted us back in captivity again. That's what they really wanted.
It's a lot y'all want from me. Like, that's why they giving out all these stimulus checks, man. Because they know we finna spend that money. Because we the people that buy everything from them. You know what I'm saying? So they keep giving us money to buy from them to make them rich. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's all it is. Even if we get reparations, that's what's gonna go.
Yeah, they know it.
Back to them.
God, sir.
I think even Dave Chappelle made like a skit about it. He said, man, these black people are rushing to get their money right back to us. He said stock in Cadillac went up and all that.
He had a slave edition Cadillac.
Huh?
He had a slave edition Cadillac.
All that, man. It's crazy, man. Liquor, fried chicken stock went up.
Right.
But all right. Now, let me see if this the one I bring that about. Okay. Let me get into this part right here. Like people think that it was just in the southeast, but no, they removed Native Americans from Illinois, Wisconsin. Like I think Chicago and Wisconsin are actually Indian names, right?
Yeah. So like I don't want some of them Indian names was like Dakota and Blackfoot up in those areas right
Dakota,
there.
yep.
So like,
I think Michigan
mm-hmm.
was all like Native American names.
Okay.
So when they removed them from those areas and everything. So it was another one. It was called a Black Hawk War. Somebody about to say something on the conference line? All right. It was a brief but bloody war from April to August 1832 between the United States and Native Americans led by Black Hawk. His name was Makatai Mishi Kayak, a 65-year-old Sauk warrior who in April led some 1,000 Sauk, Fox, and Kickapoo men, women, and children, including about 500 warriors across the Mississippi to reclaim land in Illinois that tribal spokesmen had surrendered to the U.S. in 1804. Now, these spokesmen were not of their people because we just read that they made treaties that didn't involve the Native Americans. So these spokesmen, of course, was if not technically $5 Indians, spiritually $5 Indians. Right? This might have been before the Dawes Roll, like the times I might have to check on. But, there were people doing these things. They do that with everybody. All of a sudden, what they'll do is they'll have one devil go marry a wife or marry somebody of that nation, and then that child is now the spokesman for the whole people. That's how that happens. They don't even live under the same circumstances as the rest of everybody else. Right? They don't even live under the same circumstances.
At all.
But they gonna speak for the people that's in poverty. Right? The bands crossing back into Illinois spurred fear and anger among white settlers, and eventually a force of 7,000 mobilized against them, including members of the U.S. Army, state militias, and warriors from various other Indian peoples. Some of the people they had that betrayed their own people fought against other Native Americans. Some 450 to 600 Indians and 70 soldiers and settlers were killed during the war. In 1837, all surrounding tribes had fled to the west, leaving most of the former Northwest Territory to white settlement. Among those who participated in various roles during the war were a number of men who would figure prominently in U.S. history, including future U.S. presidents. Oh yeah, Abraham Lincoln, right? They fought against the Native Americans. So everybody think Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. He didn't give a damn about you. It was all political.
Right.
Zachary Taylor, a longtime military leader, presidential candidate Winfield Scott, and Jefferson Davis, who would become president of the Confederate States of America. So he had the Confederate flag, right? Just the background of it, the Treaty of 1804 and white settlement in Northwest Territory. At the center of the Black Hawk War was a treaty between the Sauk and Fox peoples and the United States that had been signed in St. Louis in November 1804, by which the Indians agreed to cede to the United States all of their lands to the Mississippi, east of the Mississippi, and some claims west of it. In exchange, they were to receive cash, which is $1,000 in goods from the United States every year. From the U.S. perspective, the Treaty of 1804, also known as the Treaty of St. Louis, was binding and legal. It had been negotiated by William Henry Harrison, the governor of Indiana Territory, which included Illinois in 1804, and was formally ratified by the United States Senate in January 1805. The Salk and Fox, on the other hand, argued that the treaty had been negotiated and signed not by important chiefs, but by 4 men who had not been authorized by the Salk and Fox tribal councils to cede any land. Right? So they didn't they went to some people or whatever and then just said that they're gonna be the ones that's gonna decide on all the Native Americans. And let me see. Oh yeah, that's who. So it didn't. They said that it was the government of the Indian Territory, which had nothing to do with the government. They didn't go to the people that actually was the leaders that the people wanted in place. That's why Black Hawk, or that's what they called him, Black Hawk. He went and tried to get the land back because they didn't negotiate for it, right? And that's where the term Indian givers came from, right? They would try to get something from the Native Americans, and then they would want it back because they didn't, that wasn't what they were doing. Like there'll be times like they'll say, okay, I'll give you this water bottle for 200 acres. And then, the Native Americans just thinking like, okay, we gonna just share the land, they gonna do this. But no, they kicking them out the land, right? And they said, no, we want the land back. That's why they called them Indian givers. That's where that term came from. Yeah. When the U.S. insisted on the validity of the treaty, it strained an already tense relationship. Indeed, many Salk and Fox would not have been pleased when the Americans replaced the Spanish in Louisiana in early 1804, fought for the British in the War of 1812. So they fought alongside the British too. That's those tribes. Nevertheless, under the terms of the treaty, the Indians could remain on their land as long as it was under the possession of the U.S. government. That is, until private settlers purchased it. Now, by law, you got to get your stuff and leave. The first 3 decades of the 19th century were a period of tremendous population growth in Illinois, which became a state in 1818. In 1800, there were so few non-Native American residents in what would become Illinois that federal census takers did not even bother counting them. So it was all Native American land at this point. There wasn't anybody there. Like now you go there, there's a bunch of devils, but at that time it wasn't hardly any there. Right? By 1820, the non-Native American population of Illinois had reached 55,000. 10 years later, it nearly tripled, 157,000. As American settlers swept north and west across the states of the Northwest Territory, more and more Native groups abandoned their villages and farms for new lands west of the Mississippi. By the late 1820s, the Salk and Fox villages in the northwestern corner of the state comprised the last significant area of native settlement in Illinois. Because they moved them out, they kept going in and taking their stuff. So they ended up moving further and further west, away from where anything, like Illinois is also a decent land to grow stuff on, right? But anything west of you start getting into like Nebraska and Iowa, you back into the prairie lands. That's why out there, the only thing like you can really do a lot of stuff with is like meat. A lot of meat out there, like beef and all of that, because that's the only thing you can grow out there is cows. You can't grow no land out there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? In addition to cheap, fertile farmland, settlers were drawn to the region by the presence of lead, which the Sauk and Fox had mined for decades, both for their own purposes and to trade. On the eve of war in 1812, American miners had tried to take over the Fox People's lead mines west of the river, which is now WK, Iowa, but were driven off by the Fox. So they already sent them over there, and now they trying to take their land again. Try to take that again. Cause now, oh wait, it's lead over there. It's something we can take to make some money. Let's drive them even further off of here. Right? The Indians protested strongly. Go ahead.
It's so heavy what you're bringing out right now, out of one. This whole thing is pretty much breaking down that antebellum period. That's what they did to us back then. You know, when they were battling back between, freeing the slaves and keeping the slaves and stuff, they already knew from top. They regardless of what they did, they were gonna have to keep us poor. That's the only way that they were going to stay in control of the lands and stuff, stay in control of the crops, stay in control of the housing and stuff like that. I mean, pretty much everything it took in order for a nation to thrive. That what that whole antebellum period was about.
Exactly. They wanted to keep you poor, keep you starving, because the more you starving, the more, like if you, the more you starving, you're going to be more. You see how we were in Egypt, right? We was fighting. You wanted to go, 40 days after we got out of Egypt, we wanted to go back because we got tired of eating leavened bread.
Right. It's a lot, Galawan. Like you said, the more you starving, the more you depend on them. You know what I'm saying? That's true because, like, if you see it now today, they starve Black and Hispanics and Native Indians out all day long. But our people so messed up, like, they depend on, like, they think, the people, how do you think the person that oppress you is your friend? How?
Yep. They're not your friend. But you think they are.
Right, it can't be.
You think they are because they come with gifts. After, like, they'll take your land and then come up with a pallet of food and be like, okay, here goes some food to feed you. After they took, you lived on your land for thousands of years.
Right.
And you can feed yourself. But no, we're going to just give you a little bit of food, so now it suffices you, and now you my slave. All right? Try to get through some of this. Yeah, they protested strongly, but the U.S. government supported the miners, of course, because you can make money off of it. Right? Okay? They can make money off of it. Despite the ongoing tension between the American Native American miners that occasionally erupted into violence during the 1820s, Americans flocked to the region. This new, mostly white population viewed the Native American population with great concern. Some, including Presidents George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, believed that Native Americans would adopt the culture of white Americans in their thinking and become civilized and merge into white society. But like the majority of Western settlers, most Illinoisans rejected this belief and saw Indians as not permanently inferior but dangerous. Settlers of isolated farms and villages worried about Native American raids, and their fears were not entirely unjustified. It had not been long since the Illinois tribes had attacked frontier settlements and federal forts during the War of 1812. Moreover, personal violence between natives and whites, as well as among natives, among whites, was common at the time. So, of course, they point out them fighting against them. If you were in their land, then you wouldn't have to worry about fighting them. But you're in somebody, that's funny, you go to somebody else's land and then worry about them fighting you to get you out of there. You come in their land, make them starving, and then you starve them out, and you worry, and now you saying they dangerous because you got them hungry.
Right.
That's the growing tensions in Illinois. In the mid-1820s, some southern and western states demanded that the national government take a larger role in Native American affairs. This process began in Georgia, where the governor and state legislature tried to pressure President John Quincy Adams to remove Creek and Cherokee populations from the state. By the fall of 1820, Illinois Governor Ninian Edwards had also begun calling on the Adams administration to remove the remaining Indians from his state, because tribes in Illinois had signed treaties ceding their land within the states decades earlier. They so-called ceded their land. Edwards needed only to ask the administrators to enforce already existing treaties, right? Not to negotiate new ones. In July 1828, U.S. Secretary of War Peter Porter informed Edwards that the remaining Native Americans had agreed to leave the state by the end of May 1829. Andrew Jackson succeeded Adams as president in March 1829, already had a long history of challenging challenging federal Indian policy. As both a general and a commissioner charged with negotiating land cessions, he believed strongly that it was in the interest of both Native Americans and whites that any Eastern Indians who wanted to remain a member of a tribe and practice a native culture should move beyond the Mississippi. Although it met with widespread criticism from the press, the people, and many in Congress, the bill advocated by Jackson became the Indian Removal Act, passed both houses of Congress in May 1830, empowering the president to send commissioners to negotiate removal treaties. Jackson's administration did not believe, however, that a new treaty with the Sauk and Fox was needed. The two tribes had already committed to relocate west of the Mississippi under old treaties. The Treaty of 1804 was reaffirmed in 1816 by the Fox and some Sauk. And John Reynolds, the new governor of Illinois, felt confident of federal support for his request that the Sauk and Fox force to comply with these old treaties. So these treaties that they did not sign was probably had some fine print about them agreeing to leave that they, like I said, they didn't even sign. He wasn't a member of their government, of their people. Like, we might have people here that we might respect, but they gave you, what's his name? Al Sharpton. That's who became your leader, Al Sharpton. Right. Jesse Jackson. Who were these Negroes? Where they come from? They just all of a sudden got put in a place. This is your leader. Right?
All right.
There's no history on you don't see history on them and like how they grew up, and then black people rallied up with them, and they ended up being the spokesperson for black people. That's not what happened. They just got placed in a position.
Right.
In 1828, the agent of the Sauk and Fox, Thomas Forsyth, informed the tribal chiefs that they should begin preparing to abandon their village and farms east of the Mississippi. The chiefs responded by denying ever having ceded this land, thereby straining the relation between both the federal government, which wanted to start selling the land on the Rock River, and the state government, as pressure mounted from William Clark, the former explorer turned federal superintendent of Indian Affairs in St. Louis. Tensions emerged among the Sauk and Fox. By the spring of 1829, Black Hawk had become a forceful spokesperson for the view that the tribes had never knowingly ceded their Illinois lands. Others, notably Black Hawk's main rival, Keokuk, concluded that because the Sauk and the Fox could not possibly resist the United States by force, removal was necessary. So this is another traitor. He may not even be. He might not even be a Native American. He might just have a Native American mother. Right? Let me see here. I'm looking at a picture of him. It's kind of like a white man to me. So, any rate. All right. So, and he wanted to. He said, "It's a good. You should leave." Right. He said, "If undesirable." Right. In the fall of 1829, Keokuk and his people abandoned their principal settlement, Saukenuk, which is near modern-day Rock Island in the north, and crossed the Mississippi, vowing never to return. Despite warnings from Keokuk that the tribal council would not support them, Black Hawk and other Sauk and Fox warriors and families returned from their winter quarters in Iowa to Saukenuk in the spring of 1830. The few hundred who returned again in 1831 realized that the white settlers had come to stay but refused to leave the sacred home of their ancestors without being removed by force. Black Hawk's band also tried to use the 1804 treaty to their advantage, saying that they were entitled to return to the land because it was yet unsold. So they tried to use it to their advantage. Like they try to say it wasn't sold, so we can come here, we can squat here just like you did, right? Randoms who saw the return of Black Hawk's band in the spring of 1831 as an invasion called out a mounted militia of 700 men. General Edward Gaines, commander of the Western Division of the U.S. Army, met Saukenuk with the Sauk and Fox chiefs, but refused to allow them to remain even long enough to harvest their corn. This development, coupled with Gaines' acceptance of Keokuk's a proposal that the government provide the Sauk and Fox with corn for the winter. So they wanted to get, like, they couldn't even let their corn harvest so they can at least have food. They wanted them to leave before that. And so they wanted to try to get some, if you give me corn then. Led many families to recross the Mississippi. By mid-June, with many of the Sauk and Fox about to leave or already gone, Black Hawks sought support from nearby Kickapoo, Potawatomi, and Ho-Chunk, including the Ho-Chunk prophet White Cloud. So they don't say nothing about them getting that food. You notice that. All right. Let me go down a little bit. In mid-April, just days after Black Hawk's band entered Illinois, both the U.S. Army and the state militia had mobilized and begun their pursuit. By happenstance, a detachment of federal troops commanded by General Henry Atkinson was already en route to Rock Island on a mission to prevent the Sauk and Fox from warring with the Menominee and Sioux. After arriving in April 12, Atkinson met with friendly Sauk and Fox chiefs whose refusal to help convinced him that Black Hawk's intentions were hostile. Even though Black Hawk and his warriors were still near the mouth of the Rock River, Atkinson decided not to use his small force to try to stop them. As a result, Black Hawk's band continued further up the Rock and deeper into Illinois. So now we're going to war. All right. Massacre at Bad Axe and surrender. On August 1st, Black Hawk's band of perhaps 500 men, women, and children reached the eastern bank of the Mississippi a few miles downriver from the Bad Axe River in Wisconsin. Black Hawk and White Cloud suggested breaking up into small groups, turning north and hiding out in the Ho Chunk villages. But most of the Sauk and Fox wanted to build rafts to cross the river as quickly as possible. Some got across the Mississippi that day, but these efforts were interrupted by the appearance of the Warrior, a steamboat bearing artillery and 20 soldiers that was returning southward from a visit to the Sioux. Under a white flag, Black Hawk waded out in the river and tried once again to surrender as at Stillman's Run and at Wisconsin Heights. However, the soldiers could not understand them. After 10 or 15 minutes of failed communications, the soldiers on the Warrior opened fire on the unprepared Sauk and Fox. After a 2-hour battle, the Warrior's fuel supply was nearly exhausted and it headed downriver, but not before nearly 24 Indians had been killed. Convinced that safety lay north among the Ho Chunk and Ojibwe villages rather than cross the river, Black Hawk pleaded with his people, but few were willing to follow him. Late on August 1st, Black Hawk, White Cloud, and 30 to 40 others left the main band and headed north. A few more Sauk and Fox crossed the river before darkness made it too dangerous. Most remained on the eastern bank. Early on August 2nd, the battle of the Bad Axe began when Atkinson's forces encountered the Sauk rear guard, who were only temporarily successful in leading the soldiers away from the band's main camp. The Warriors fought to allow time for more women and children to cross the river. As Atkinson's troops pushed the Warriors towards the river, the steamboat returned, firing its cannon into the Indians from behind. The slaughter of the eastern bank of the river continued for 8 hours. The soldiers shot at anyone, man, woman, or child, whether they tried to swim across the river or to surrender. They also scalped most of the dead bodies. Of the roughly 400 Indians east of the Mississippi at the time of the battle, most were killed. Some escaped across the river, and a few were taken prisoner. Most of the 150 or so who traversed the Mississippi on August 1st and 2nd were tracked down and killed or captured within a few weeks by Sioux warriors acting in support of the army. You tracked down by your own brothers. During the month after the Battle of Bad Axe, U.S. Army officers and soldiers, federal agents with the different northwestern tribes, and many Native Americans worked to round up anyone associated, however distantly, with Black Hawk. On August 20th, the friendly Sauk and Fox under Keokuk took the Pope and a number of other chiefs and warriors to General Scott at Fort Armstrong on Rock Island. Black Hawk and White Cloud spent much of the month preparing to surrender. Having fled to the northeast, the two leaders abandoned the last of the warriors who had accompanied them, traveled to Ho Chunk village in La Crosse, Wisconsin, where they rested before surrendering to the Ho Chunk agent at Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin on August 27th. Aftermath and significance. Prisoners who had been taken by the army at Bad Axe, as well as those brought in by the Sioux over the next few weeks, were moved to Fort Armstrong on Rock Island. There, within a few miles of Sokonook, more than 120 men, women, and children were held until the end of August, when most of them were released, partly because the cholera epidemic had reached the fort, and Scott worried that it would spread rapidly through prisoners and soldiers alike. So they only released them because of the epidemic that came. 11 men, including Black Hawk, White Cloud, and the Pope, remained in custody after September 1st and were conveyed by Lieutenant Jefferson Davis to confinement in St. Louis. In the spring, five were turned over to Keokuk. In April 1833, Black Hawk, White Cloud, and the Pope and 3 others were sent to Washington, D.C. after meeting with President Jackson. They were held in Fort Monroe in Virginia for several weeks before return to Fort Armstrong via a circuitous route through most of the large cities of the East, where immersed crowds clamored to see them. White Cloud and the Sun were released to Prairie du Chien in mid-July. In October, Keokuk and other Sauk and Fox leaders took charge of Black Hawk and others. It is impossible to know how many Indians died in the Black Hawk War, but estimates range between 450 and 600. Some were killed in the fighting, and others were hunted down by Indians fighting on the American side. Many simply died of starvation, and on the other side, some 70 soldiers and settlers died in the conflict. All right, two more paragraphs. In late September 1832, Scott and Reynolds. What was that?
Sir, if I may.
Right.
Shalom, sir. Just wanted to piggyback on what fellow officer said earlier. I was looking up a little bit. And Oscarville is in Forsyth County. You know, that same county where Oprah went in back in the 90s. When, you know, they pretty much kicked out all the blacks, or, you know, all the Negroes in that town, burned down a whole bunch of houses, some say 100 houses. You know, what they would say, they had pretty much no blacks in the entire county, right? And the Lake Lanier was filled up for about 5 years, and the overflow, they used that to flood Oscarville. And, you know, and furthermore, after that show with Oprah, their economy just tanked, you know what I mean? So, and that's one of the places right now, to get a cheap home in Forsyth County, they're still suffering from that, you know, that bad publicity with Oprah.
Sound correct. And this whole place burned, man.
Damn right.
Well, that's what needs to happen, because America can't be reformed. Has to be destroyed. Right?
Damn right.
They can't, you can't change this. You can't try to appeal to their conscience. They don't have a conscience. Right? They only have a conscience for their own people and dogs. That's it. They don't care about nobody else, man. In late September 1832, Scott and Reynolds met with the Sauk and Fox chiefs and demanded most of the east of Iowa as indemnity for the war, offering an annual payment of $20,000 for the next 30 years. As a result of Keokuk's negotiating, the Fox and Sauk also received a 400 square mile reserve. In the end, as a result of the Black Hawk War, the friendly Sauk and Fox found themselves stripped of valuable and extensive landholdings and dependent economically and politically on the United States. So they gave away extensive landholdings that would make them independent, so now they got to be dependent on the United States. An equally severe treaty was forced on the Ho-Chunk, some of whom had joined Black Hawk and some of whom had helped Atkinson. The Black Hawk War involved a number of men who were going on important national, political, and military careers, not least three future presidents, Abraham Lincoln, Zachary Taylor, and Jefferson Davis. One important figure who did not benefit from his role in the Black Hawk War was Atkinson, whose subordinates in the field and superiors in Washington believed he had badly mishandled the conflict, first by allowing it to turn bloody, and then by failing to crush it immediately once it did. Following the war, the official report to Congress papered over Arkansas' shortcomings, but Taylor's later argued that Black Hawk's land could have been removed back to the west side of the Mississippi without there being a gun fired if the regular army troops under Atkinson rather than militia had met them first. So they don't care about the bloody part of the Native Americans. They care about the 70 soldiers that they lost. That's where you get it from. You said, well, you should have squelched it before it became bloody. That tells you they don't care about this. It was 450 to 600? So they said they should have squelched it. How are they going to squelch the fight, the war? By killing them all. and without any of them dying. So they feel more about those 70 soldiers that died than the Native Americans. So you like, at the end of the day, they're going to support their own.
Right.
They're not supporting you.
Right.
That's why only people that can support you is your own people.
Damn right.
That's why you gotta unify with your own, man.
Right.
You gotta come and learn how to be brothers to your own people.
Right.
And that's how we can, that's the only thing that we have left, man. We don't have land, we don't have money, we don't have any of this. The only thing we have left is brotherhood, man.
Right.
That is it. If we have brotherhood, if we lose brotherhood, you see what happened. They was fighting against each other and they died. Right?
It's a lot y'all don't want if I make.
Go ahead.
I mean, like what you saying is so heavy, and with the Passover that we just had, the 53rd Lord's Passover, having the brotherhood and the sisterhood that we saw, that's the only way we gonna fix our nation and come back to anything.
Exactly.
That was powerful.
We can't, I mean, it's the only way. The only thing we got left is brotherhood. You gotta love one another, man. They love one another. That's what they talked about them, that they was mad at him because they felt that those 70 shouldn't have died. They got brotherhood.
Right.
You need to have brotherhood for your own, man. And that's how you keep us from dying, through brotherhood. All right? Anybody got any questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't concert. Just want to say, for water, real excellent class.
No sweat, no sweat. All right, anybody else? Going once, going twice. And with that, pass the class over to Police Officer Masha.
Isupk security announcements. We are Isupk, started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Rule for new brother or sister. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to share themselves with the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There's another 6 months in which the brother or sister will court each other. After this 6-month period, the brother or sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment. Numbers 18 through 21, Malachi 3:8 through 10. Ma'ashera means 10th in the Hebrew, 10% of every penny of the increase the Lord gives you. Give to the Treasury Department or teacher. Preach fund, free will offering for priests, not mandatory, whatsoever amount you would like. The next upcoming holy convocation is the closing of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Remind Akim and Akwathium to check the bulletin board in the hallway. If anyone wants to be a trooper in the school, start wearing all black boots, shirts, pants, headband, and scarves. And to Google address every time they are heading to the school. And with that, we'll give the teacher a courtesy salute. Men of Israel, Amijah Shabbat, Amijah, Barak, Yahweh Hashem Yahshua Barakatham,
Yahweh Hashem Yahshua Barakatham.
Yamatah, hands down, since we have no sisters in the school or online, class dismissed.